all loose items in the pouch in front of you.
Have a safe and informative journey.
Hello, I'm Nathan Hartman, and this is Dreamfinders, a podcast about the creative culture of Disney theme parks. Tammy Tuckey wasn't your average Disney parks-loving kid. While others simply enjoyed the theatrics of parades and shows, Tammy absorbed them. After seeing the musical of Finding Nemo, she went home and performed it in its entirety for her neighborhood friends. That passion for Disney performance would blossom into her newest music album, You'll Find Me on Main Street, a collection of beloved Disney Parks songs. Tammy sits down with me to talk about her inquisitive nature and how it led to interviewing Debbie Reynolds on her podcast, The Tiara Talk Show, why she thinks it's time to re-examine what it takes to be a Disney princess, and why songs like Tomorrow's Child still resonate with her today. All of that and more is coming right up on Dreamfinders. Tammy Tuckey, welcome to Dreamfinders.
Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it. It's like a twist and turn in events, you know. Somebody's interviewing me now.
Yeah, it's a different side of the mic, as it were. So you're a singer and a podcaster and an actress and a filmmaker. You've done a lot of stuff. There's quite a lot that we want to cover. But before we get into all of that, are you from a creative family? Tell me about your upbringings.
Yes, obviously, I think that I've inherited a lot of creativeness from my family. So I like to call myself the Dolly Levi of doing almost everything. I think that's because my mom is such a great supporter of other people. She's very loud and proud, and she always encouraged me to keep learning as a student. So I was a very smart kid, not to, pat myself on the back or anything, but I was just extremely smart. So she encouraged me to read, to go ahead and perform, because I was always at Disney World, and before the parades and shows, I would be standing up and asking people to bow and clap for me, and then bringing other kids up and pretending like I was an entertainer. So my mom was like, this girl needs a way to fuse all this, energy. And she also, I was in enrichment. And so I'd be able to go on these trips, thanks to my mom for kind of encouraging me to, pursue my academic career and take it seriously, which I always loved reading and learning. So I was always into that type of aspect. And then my dad, he was a student at Temple University, and he was a filmmaker himself. So he actually had some beautiful pieces of work. I think he's uploaded them to his YouTube channel. And one of his classmates was actually Bob Saget, and they were the only two students to get an A in class, A minus. The teacher never gave A's. So lo and behold, I think there is that combination of the creativeness from my dad and the drive from my mother that just, kind of fueled me. And they've always been so supportive of me. I'm a lucky girl. So, that's kind of where it comes from, I assume.
So where did you actually grow up? What side of the coast here in America?
I was on the East Coast. I was a Philly girl, not a West Philly girl. I was not a Fresh Princess of Bel-Air, but I was kind of a little bit on the outskirts of the city. So I'm not in the suburbs, but, in an area of Philly. And so I grew up in that section. So, but I was always going to Philly, the city, and because my parents, we always loved history. So we were going there almost all the time, at least once every month, to go to the Franklin Institute to learn the science behind so many different things. And then also the history of just, Benjamin Franklin and Betsy Ross. We have an amazing city. So, my parents were always trying to, give my sister and I new experiences. So that's kind of where I was based in growing up.
So would you say that being in a city that provides a lot of creative outlets, that inspired you at a young age with your creativity, or was it more television or film, or what really sparked your imagination at a young age?
I think a mixture of the two, because the history and seeing all of these performers perform as historic figures. We also have something called Once Upon a Nation, where there are 13 benches at 13 different historic locations in Philly, and you go to each bench. And you have an actor or actress who tells you an historically accurate story, but performs it for you. And then once you hear the story, you get a star on your flag. So you have 13 stars for the original 13 colonies. And so my sister and I just adored that. So we loved, the art of Philly. We were known for a lot of things. So that was just a great inspiration. And I think also having VHS tapes, gonna date myself here, and laser discs. That was a great experience too, because I think the first film I recall watching as a kid was Singing in the Rain. So watching that and just, falling in love with Donald O'Connor and wanting to be Debbie Reynolds was something that just sparked my imagination, and I wanted to hear more music. So my mom kind of caught on to that. And luckily we had, us 90s kids and 80s kids, we had the Disney sing-along tapes. So those were something that was always playing in the house. And I would be dancing and singing and entertaining myself and my sister. We'd be having a great time. So I think it was a mixture of the two. Just a lot of arts in my background, and being able to pursue the imagination and ideas that I had as a little kid was so helpful.
Let's talk about those Disney sing-alongs for a minute. I hadn't thought about those in a long time. Was there a favorite that you had? I think camping was way up there on my list, if I remember correctly.
I never had camping, and I didn't even know that camping was related to the beach party at Walt Disney World, because the same kids were used for that. But I was a beach party at Walt Disney World, Flick's Musical Adventure, and Disneyland Fun. And it was funny because I got to interview a lot of the cast from all three.
Oh, wild.
So Disneyland Fun, that was a hard one to track down because nobody was cited as a performer, I believe. I'm trying to remember. So we got 4 of the cast members from that. I did. Beach Party. I tracked down a lot of the people. And I got to interview Toby, and he is so sweet. He's now based in California. Toby with the wavy hair, as we call him. And Flick's Musical Adventure, I got to interview all 8 kids from that. And that was the last live-action sing-along tape, actually, from '98. So I was just so shocked that I found these people on Facebook, and thank God for Facebook, you know what I mean? But those were the ones the live action ones that I adored. And of course, the animated ones. I love the Under the Sea one, the Be Our Guest. I would watch all of them. But the live action ones really had me hooked. I just adored them.
This seems like a real focal point when it comes to your creativity, because if you look at what you do, it is pretty much everything that's in those videos. It's singing, it's acting, it's Disney. It's at Disneyland. It's in the parks, some of them. When did you first? Is this the first point where you really got into singing, or like that's something that I really want to do?
I think so. Luckily my dad filmed almost our entire childhood. So I can go back because I have memories, and then I go back to the videos and I know that they're true. So I was a little entertainer from, 1.5 and on. And I think my first trip was also when I was around 2, like a little bit younger than 2. I bet maybe like 1 3/4, to Disney World. And my parents always explained to me that once we got back from that trip, I think it was early '98. And also a quick thing, because the name of your podcast is Dreamfinder. I kind of screeched and screamed like a little girl because I found a photo of me and Dreamfinder and Figment.
Oh, wild.
And it was the last time that they were in Epcot, and I never knew I met them. That was actually the only trip my dad did not film, and he took a picture. So there's a picture of me and Dreamfinder with my mom's head in the way, unfortunately, but it's me. So I do know for sure that I met Dreamfinder, which was great. But that trip, we came back, and for the next 6 months, I would not stop talking about Disney. And I was like 1.5. So my parents were like, what in the world? She remembers all of this, because usually kids don't retain that information. So we went back the same year during the hurricane season. Woohoo. And we had another amazing trip, and it just spiraled from there. So we would just kept going back, and that was always amazing because, as I always credit the cast members, because they were so sweet and giving of their time, and I just love watching them perform. And they'd sometimes bring me up to perform with them, or I'd meet and greet with them, and I was in awe. You know what I mean? It was just an unbelievable thing for me, and I think that's also where a lot of it derives, because I just, there's so many memories that I have of that, and I'm so lucky.
Something that I really love, and I wish I had more of myself, and I do have some of them, but you mentioned your father taking videos of your trips. Do you go back to those now, and do they sort of fill in some of the areas that were sort of blurry that you kind of remember? I find myself doing that, looking at maps my parents kept and things, just from trying to remember those experiences.
Yeah, what you did and everything. Well, it was, yes, I kind of kick myself that I never had, like, I wish my mom would have like started a diary too, so like we could note some things that weren't on the camera. But again, she had 2 little girls to worry about. Also a big boy, my dad. We were having too much fun. But no, those videos, they absolutely fill in a lot of the gaps. And it's a great outlet to figure out, what did we do? Where did we go? And you know what? The awesome thing about it is, because of my podcast and because I've interviewed so many cast members, I've been able to send them clips from those home videotapes, and they've been able to name the person in that clip who was best friends with Alice or best friends with Peter Pan. And I've been able to get in touch with them and share these videos. Like, one of them was best friends with Ariel in Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and she had no video footage of her performing that show, nothing. And my dad filmed the entire show.
Oh, wow.
And so she, it's things like that make you appreciate. And that's why I try to post as much as I can to my YouTube channel, because I don't know who is out there watching it and might be able to pick up and be like, oh my God, that's me. Or, oh my gosh, that's my cousin. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. So they've been able to fill in the blanks for me and other people, which is unbelievable. And that's just a lucky break right there. So thank goodness for my dad and his camera. You know what I mean?
He's making everyone's memories.
Yeah. And my mom, I had to give her credit too. She got the photos printed, and then she would put them in albums. And we have these huge albums of just countless photos of happy times, and and it's great because I can go back and I know what year it is, what date it is. She just was so articulate with making sure it was perfect. Now
we're going to talk more about your music album coming up here, but I think this is a good segue because a lot of those photos got some use in a music video that you did.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that music video, because it's a fun, really kind of heartwarming piece that you created.
Yes, I did. My last song of the album is Remember the Magic, which was a song. It was my first Disney parade, which was the 25th anniversary parade, Remember the Magic. And there was this beautiful ballad jazz piece that, his first name is Brian. I'm going blank on his full. Brian McKnight, that's his name. And so I thought, well, this would be the perfect song to end with, because every time I hear the song itself, I get very emotional. So, and then I thought, I was talking with my parents and my sister, and we were going to Disney coming up in about 9 months. And I said, well, what do you guys think of this? I take specific video clips and photos that we have that I've scanned and saved. I will print them all out. So we'll get them printed and sent to us. We'll take them with us so we can recreate them in the parks. And then I could make an accompany with the song with a music video. And they were like, oh yeah, this would be great. So it was actually a lot harder than we thought. So we got all the pictures, printed out. We separated them into what parks, what sections, what lands. So like Frontierland, Ventureland, Tomorrowland, that type of thing. Animal Kingdom, Asia, Africa, blah, blah, blah. So we did that, and we went down. And we started because we had some photos at the Orlando International Airport, started there and just started taking these pictures. And we got cast members involved too because they wanted to be involved, and some of them were in those original photos, believe it or not. So you'll see that. And we had other cast members that weren't originally in the photos, but they wanted to help because we have like random people walking behind the scenes. So they would be like, well, I'll walk behind it for you, like pretend to walk. So I'm in the photo and like it's kind of accurate. So that was so much fun. And the cast members were getting a kick out of it. We were having so much fun, and we had all these guests who were checking out these photos we had because we had tons of them, 150, I think.
Oh, wow.
Photos and videos. So not all of them are in that music video. We saved a couple, and I just found a new batch. So the next time we go to Disney World, I'm hoping that we'll be able to take some more images and use them for the music video for the next one.
That's awesome.
So that was a blast. I don't think anybody else has really done that before. So we were hoping it would have gone viral, but we got 5,000 views on it, which was great. So, and Bob Iger saw it.
Hey, there you go.
I tweeted at him and he favorited it. So, and he doesn't favorite a lot of things. So hi, Bob Iger.
So let's go back to your early education in high school, and you have this love for Disney, and you're going to the parks now and then. And I'm assuming when you're in school, you're using the arts as a major part of your life. Were you in a lot of extracurricular activities at the time?
Yeah, I did a lot of the musicals. I did every single high school musical. I did every middle school musical. I tried to do the summer shows, but sometimes we were traveling to Disney World during that time, so it wouldn't work. But yeah, I was very much involved in all of those activities with theater overall. So I would help out, behind the scenes, be on the stage. That was my main thing. That was the only thing I really had time for. And sometimes I'd do my own like little shows and cabarets at my house, and we invite the neighbors over. We did Finding Nemo the musical. I typed out that entire script from the soundtrack, and then all the little neighborhood kids who never gone to Disney World, we did a show for them, and that was so much fun. And we found out later on that the cast of Finding Nemo the musical, every time they have a new crew that comes in, they show them our production.
Wow.
So because they said there are kids who are watching and they're paying attention. So, be aware, which is so sweet. So every time we go to Finding Nemo, they always want to meet up with us, which is so sweet. I love them all.
You seem to have a lot of energy towards entertaining people, and you find all sorts of outlets to do that, including in 2014 when you took home a student Emmy for a news segment. And that news segment was called More Than a Blanket. Tell us about that segment and then your relationship with the news side of broadcasting. Was that an interest of yours?
Yeah, I was taught. I had spent so much time with this one teacher, and I did not know because I was having a rough time with some of the math classes with her, and I didn't know at the time that her mother was dying, and after her mother passed away, we had a kind of a long conversation, and I had an assignment for my film class about doing a 12-minute documentary, 8 to 12 minutes. And I asked her if I'd be able to talk about her mother and herself because she started picking up crocheting, and all around the world, people would send like little patches of crocheted work. And then she would work with some friends to put them into a blanket, crochet them into a blanket and give them to somebody who's a cancer patient. And it was just an amazing story. So we filmed and we discussed it, and it was a lot of fun to see how much joy she was getting out of giving back to the community of individuals who are going through cancer, families who are with individuals who are going with cancer, or who are going through cancer. And so that's what that idea came out of. And we created this film. And I was lucky enough to get a student Emmy for it, which was a huge blessing and honor. And I had two other friends who helped me with the film, Sarah and also Emily. So we were just so blessed.
So that student Emmy comes around for broadcasting. Was broadcasting something that you had an inclination towards, or was it more of part of a larger media course or media kind of like, I like doing this stuff, but I'm not 100% sure what direction I'd like to go in?
Well, it's kind of weird. So for my generation, we were kind of stuck in between. We started using the Dewey Decimal System, and then we were kind of weaned off that so we
Yeah.
could use the
Yeah.
computers. So here I am in a little bit, my generation, my crew, my high school crew and, school crew, we were kind of in limbo because we were starting to use more technologies. So in middle school, they kind of, they had laptops, Macs, for us to, get a kick out of using certain applications. And so in a way, I like to compare it to like the iPads. Kids can, create things on the iPads. We could create things on the Macs. So I started using GarageBand. I didn't know what the heck it was. It took a lot of, I think it took about 3 years of going through it until I was like, oh, I can use this to record conversations, because that's the first time I started the original podcast started in 2011 with two other individuals, Danelle and Darlene. And we just started recording conversations because there weren't a lot of female voices out there in the podcasting world, especially around Disney. So we did that for a while and did some interviews. And that was like 2011. And then we were all kind of busy. And so 2 years later, I just started the Tiara Talk Show. I kind of expanded it and just did a one woman thing. And that's where that just kind of kicked in. I didn't think originally when we were recording our conversations, I had no clue that this would be something, possibly a career. So when we started doing interviews with people, because our first interview was with Helen Reddy for Pete's Dragon. So I was like, we can actually talk to people that I watched on the screen.
Yeah.
I watched on my tiny little screen at home, or, I've been listening to in my car for years. You know what I mean? So I didn't realize that was a possibility at 14 years old. And so when I was 17, it's kind of, it was just something that felt natural to me to start reaching out to other people. And people, I feel like I call it the underdogs, the individuals who have never gotten the chance to discuss their stories, because it's very sad. Some of them are just like, it's great to talk to you, but why me?
Yeah.
You know what? I just didn't do this much. I said, are you kidding me? You were a part of The Little Mermaid, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or some attractions at MGM Studios that just opened. You know what I mean? Epcot Center. So that was my drive, because I've always felt like I was an underdog. I still feel like that because, some people just, look at you and are like, scoff at you. And that just fuels me so much, because I'm like, no, it's not like I'm just, doing this because I want to. It's because I need to. And I really appreciate these people. So I think that's where it started to generate. I have to owe it to middle school for that aspect of being able to investigate new applications and how to use them, because it still was not a known thing of podcasting. It was just a beginner around that time, I believe.
Yeah. And, I want to hit on something that you sort of said there too. Not only are you starting in podcasting at a pretty young age for podcasting, you're at a pretty young age when you kind of get into it as well. And I think your age is an interesting factor. For example, I went to college for film, and it was a lot easier to get locations to let me do stuff because I was just a student filmmaker, right? I'm just a student. I'm no threat. I'm not going to cost them any money or anything, opposed to someone who's doing it for a living. Do you feel like people's perception of how old you were, or the fact that you were a student, affected who you could get or how the show operated in any way?
Yes, it did, because I actually used a stage name, Tammy Turner, for a long time. I think about almost 2 years, because I was calling up these agents or I had a guest on the show and they had no clue of my age. And then some of them would investigate and then deny me an interview request. And I think a lot of people were very, unsure. I know there's still that, because I'm 22. I'm still pretty young. I just got out of college. So I still feel like there is that dilemma there, because a lot of people just don't know what to think of that. And it's kind of, it hurts, because it's one of those things where you have the talent, you have the drive, and that you're going to give it your all. but you're just waiting for that break. I always think of like that line from Hercules where he just says, "Nobody gives me a chance. How am I supposed to prove myself if nobody gives me a chance?" You know what I mean? I've been doing. This is actually today that we're recording this. This is the fifth anniversary of my talk show, but technically it's been 7 years since I've been podcasting, and I've done it consistently, almost weekly. So, and it sometimes hurts because originally that wasn't what I was going for, but I realized that I do have a knack for this thing of editing and recording conversations and having a blast doing it. And having people who appreciate these conversations and appreciate the people who are being interviewed. And still, I feel like I haven't been given, a break or a chance. So it's always that thing where you're younger and everybody's like, well, you're too young to do this. And I can understand that because having younger individuals, come in as a little bit of a daunting thing. You think they're going to replace you. I would only want to assist and help. And I want to keep people involved and included. Age does not matter to me. I have interviewed all types of ages. I think the youngest person I interviewed was 13, and the oldest individual I interviewed was in their 80s. So that does not matter to me. And I wish I could get that more, that sense and that understanding out a little bit more, because I feel like people are just so nervous, and I don't understand that because the quality of my work, it has gotten so much better and I know it. So I know that I'm on the right track, and it's just waiting for a break it's grueling. The patience.
Yeah. Did your age also affect your confidence as an interviewer?
No, surprisingly not, actually. I was just thrilled I got to talk to people because I feel like I was probably more of a loner when I was a kid, because I feel that I was an old soul. So I just did not fit in with the kids my age. I always gravitated towards older individuals. I like to hear their stories, and I think they appreciated that as well. So when I was talking with people about Disney, I was in my element. I was safe, I was secure, and I really loved that. I thought I was A-okay. So I loved it. That's what fueled me. I was always nervous to call. You always get the butterflies, but once I got into those questions and having like a conversation with the person, it was always great. It was very enjoyable.
So let's talk a little bit more about your decision to take this on. You mentioned that you sort of started doing it with some friends, but it's it's a big difference between sort of a casual, fun conversation thing to a weekly show that is, reaching out to people to get interviewed. And coming from personal experience, it can be hard and difficult to make that all work. Did it sort of gradually become this sort of thing that's a big project, or did you just say, like, this is something that I want to dedicate like a lot of my time to?
When I restarted the show in 2013, I was like, this is what I want to do. And at the time, I was still in high school. I was going to be going to college. So I had time to build up, I guess you could say, repertoire of conversations, and have the time to do that, because I wasn't like, I was working part-time jobs, but nothing that was, taking me away, and I could dedicate a lot of time, because if I'm going to start it, I better start it right away. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because who knows what the future can hold. So that's why I went for it. I went for it because I realized this is what I want to do. And my parents were even impressed, and family members of who I was talking to. So, and they would listen too. So it was a way to communicate with people I knew as well. And to communicate with those who I admired so much. And that's kind of like a hard thing to combine, I would only assume, thinking about it now, because I've never been asked about it in this detail, which is fun. I think it's great. So yeah, I think it was I all or nothing. And I went in for it because I really wanted to see if this could be something that would transform my future. So, and I think it has in the best way possible, for better or for worse.
What's something that you feel like you've learned while making the show you wish you knew at the start? Some advice you would give to those out there that are interested in doing the same sort of thing?
Don't let your interviews go over an hour. The editing, oh my gosh, I cannot stand hearing myself. It's the most excruciating thing about the entire process is hearing yourself, especially going back to older interviews. I cannot stand it. You need a microphone. Everything's about quality. You need a quality microphone to record these conversations. Otherwise, it's no point. Make sure you have your questions gathered. Ask the ones that you're most curious about that have been affecting you since you were a kid. You know what I mean? Like, why did they put on that shoe and not that shoe? It sounds weird, but you have these questions and you have the time and you don't want to be saying to yourself, oh my gosh, I should have asked this question. And I've never not listened to one of my interviews and been like, oh, I forgot to ask this. Never. Which is actually great. Yeah. Because that would have been like irking me. I would be like, gosh, I can't play. I was always prepared. I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be there, present and ready.
So as you've mentioned, your podcast, you interview lots of Disney cast members and all sorts. Was being a cast member a job you considered pursuing, at least at the college program level, or did you?
I really strongly considered it, but I wanted to get out of college early, so I actually was there for 3 years. And I don't regret it at this point, because Disney college program is a little bit more different than what I had been told about through the past with cast members from the 90s and 80s. Like, that's the Disney college program I would like to be a part of. Not today. Not saying that's bad. I will say that. Not saying it's like horrible. No, that's not what I hear. I hear a lot of great things. I have a couple friends who are there right now, but there's this perception and appreciation. I feel that back then, and it was a different time. There were no cell phones, not like to the extent that we have now. And it was a unique period. So that's the Disney college program I had perceived in my mind. And I knew that I probably wouldn't have enjoyed myself as much if I went to Disney college program now. And also the positions I wanted, like I wanted to work in the hoop-de-doo. I wanted to do Voyage of the Little Mermaid. I wanted to do shows. And that is not involved with Disney college program. That is a union-based jobs. So, and if I wanted to do that, I'd really have to take the leap.
There's an old saying, which is never work for a place you love, because then you get to see how the sausage is made, and it's less fun. Is that a fear for you? Yes,
it's a huge fear. Although I spoke to somebody the other day, and they said they had more appreciation for it. Everybody has a different. It's like childbirth. It's going to be different for everybody. It's not going to be the same. So how are you going to know unless you experience it? And even if you experience it in the worst possible way, it's like you have that experience, right? You have it on your resume. But I don't know. And I don't know if I'd have to give up the podcast for that, because I know that some people have had to have given up certain things just to work there. And this podcast is kind of a part of my life now. And I don't want to stop giving a voice to those who don't have one or have not been able to express their experiences. So again, that's just another thing. And I love my family. I love being up here in Philly, and I don't know. I'm very unsure. But if you don't go for it, what are you going to do? Yeah. It's not gonna. It's obviously not going to come to me. And I have to go for it. So it's the dilemma currently.
So you mentioned earlier that you grew up with Singing in the Rain and wanting to be Debbie Reynolds. And this comes really full circle for you, because you actually have the opportunity to interview Debbie Reynolds for your show. And what I think is funny is like to kind of put it in context with your show and the Disney portion of it. I can't remember exactly what job she held that you gave her credit for at the forefront, right? But it wasn't like Debbie Reynolds, the legendary actor, right? It was like very specific, these things she had done at Disney, which I thought was kind of funny.
She was one of Walt Disney's personal guests at Disneyland's opening. And it was the 60th anniversary. And also she'd been in Halloween Town, the Disney Channel series that I grew up with. So that was, my show, the Tiara Talk Show is specifically somebody has had to have worked for Disney in some aspect, the company. So that could also mean, Touchstone, Marvel, it's expanded now.
Yeah.
I guess
Fox
Fox
now, yeah.
considering things. Yeah. So she had the credentials. She was good to go. So, and I was named after her. I was named after her famous song, Tammy. So that was just like, you get to speak to somebody who you're named after. Usually that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If it's a family member, yes. But if it's a celebrity, not quite. So that's what it was for me. I was, I was so nervous. I listened back to the conversation. It was so short. And I'm like, oh boy, I could have made this a lot longer, but I was so nervous. And I think she kind of sensed that too. So, but she was so sweet and so grateful. And I was just lucky I got to speak with her. I was, completely honored, and it was a great experience to talk with her. She was so sweet. So that was, it did come full circle for me.
So one of the things that you do is you have a second podcast for Her Interactive called the Unlocked Podcast. Tell us a bit about that and how you got involved.
That was, so I always grew up playing computer games. So like Reader Rabbit, Nancy Drew, Barbie Detective, like things that that kids these days will never probably play with.
Maybe on their iPad. They're still around.
Maybe on their iPad. But like Windows, I had my old Windows computer. This was before I had my Mac. So, but all of these had like problem solving aspects. And Nancy Drew was one I'd played all of the games. I think there's like 35 plus games. And I always had played them with my sister. So that was like something my sister and I got to do together. And it was a lot of fun because we got to spend time with each other and try to figure out these mysteries and stuff. So so I had seen that that the company itself hadn't released a game recently. And I thought it would be really great because I thought, oh, well, it would be great to have a podcast which you could speak to the people from past games. Wouldn't that be cool to discuss with the voiceover artists and the creative directors and the artists themselves about the games? So I just pitched the idea. I emailed them. I said, hey, what do you think? Because originally I had submitted a voiceover audition for Nancy. But they were looking for somebody who was in the vicinity in the area of Washington to take the role. So, and then I thought, well, I'll give it a shot because they do respond back to fans, which is great. So, and I just talked on the phone with a couple of the individuals there, and they were on board. And I previewed what I did with my talk show, and they just liked what I did. So that just became something where I partnered with them, and we've been doing it since 2016 now. So it will be 2 years in October that we've been doing it. And it's like every other week. And I really enjoy it because I have such an admiration for Nancy Drew. Again, a female character who's a female lead in a video game. That doesn't happen a lot. You know what I mean? So for girls, that was such a powerful thing to have a game like that.
Do you find yourself to be more aligned with Nancy Drew than Disney princesses then?
That is such a hard question because overall, I desperately want Disney to change that princess to a heroine because there are so many different Disney females that are not even a part of the lineup, which is so discouraging because you have Esmeralda, you have Kida, you have Captain Amelia, you have Meg, you have Jane, and these are girls I grew up with, and you're losing that generation of kids that have grown up. And again, I grew up in a period where it was like a little bit of a wonky time for animation for Disney. They were still trying to find what they were going to do, and Lilo and Stitch was the biggest hit at the time. And I loved Atlantis: The Lost Empire and Poor Treasure Planet. Loved that too. Didn't do well. There's so many things that were factored into this, and there is that group of people, and I'm part of it, that grew up with those films, and they're just not even acknowledged. And that just irks me. I love Nancy. I share so many qualities with her. I love the Disney princesses. I adore them all. But I love the Disney heroine. I love that it doesn't need to be a princess. Not saying princess is a bad thing, but it can be a queen. Queen Kida, a captain, Captain Amelia. It can be a writer, an artist like Jane. You know what I mean? It can be a dancer, Esmeralda. It doesn't need to be focused on princess, because I feel like it just gets such a bad reputation and it just irks me.
You've continued to sing, of course, and it's all sort of culminated in your newest album, You'll Find Me on Main Street. And for those who have not had the opportunity to check it out, it's awesome. It covers a bunch of Disney songs, but not the ones everyone else takes on. But for the most part, theme park exclusives. So what inspired you to take on this project?
Well, there was an incident, and I was so depressed and upset with it because I thought I wasn't worthy enough to be a singer and actress. And when I go for the comfort of music, I usually go for something Disney related, movies, Disney related, because that's just something that it's a comfort food basically for me. And at the time, I really wanted to perform, and I thought, well, if nobody's going to hire me or nobody's going to be interested in anything I have to say, just like it was for the podcast, I'll do it myself. So, and I had so many Disney songs I've always wanted to cover. And thanks to the podcast, I'm in touch with a lot of the original songwriters and the people who were the original singers. So I just thought, well, this would be an amazing project to work on and show my love for what I grew up with and put a different spin on things. So that's how that project came to be. And I was so lucky in that, because I was doing everything by myself. I was the producer. I was contacting Disney. I called Disney. I said, I want to do this. And they're like, what? You don't want to do Let It Go? You don't want to do Part of Your World? I'm like, no, not at all. I'd rather do these songs. So it took a lot of digging on their behalf, and I'm so glad that they were so gracious enough to help out. And picked songs that meant a lot to me in my childhood, still do. And all of them are on that album. And it was a monster to deal with. But I got it done in about, I'd say, 10 and a half months from the time I, pitched the idea to myself.
That's fast.
And that was quick. I will say that I would have liked to have had more time on it. Not that I'm not happy with what came out of it, but I'm such a perfectionist. Listening to it, I can listen to it, which is a surprise because I hate listening to my voice. I just don't like it, podcasting to singing. So I don't like doing that. So I can actually listen to the whole album all the way through as many times as possible, and I won't be irked by it. But I know that if I were to do something like this again, I know what I wouldn't do. Yeah. Because it was, when you're producing your own album and recording it and putting it together, that's a lot. That is a lot of work. But it again, another experience that I have up my sleeve.
Let's go run through a few tracks. So your opening one is a melody of Tomorrow's Child and New Horizons. Let's take a quick listen. So these songs are, of course, from an early version of Spaceship Earth and now the extinct Horizons attraction. Did you even get to ride Horizons?
I did. This is interesting because Horizons closed around 99. So my first trip was 98. We did get to ride Horizons. I don't have a recollection of Horizons. What I do have a recollection of is the CD, well, actually tape, cassette, actually, that my mom purchased that had music of Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And we played that incessantly in the car. And that song, when I hear it, I get that nostalgic hit in the feels, as they say. So it's a part of me, and I love watching videos of it. Like, I think it's such a unique attraction. And it's so interesting because I found a clip of us going on the monorail. This is when we could still ride in the front. And we were going through Epcot, and the monorail driver is explaining, because we actually pass Horizons with the walls up, but we can see over the walls since we're on the monorail. And the monorail driver says, yeah, they're going to do a space ride there now where they take you to space. So it was interesting to have that on the home videotapes, that, you know, we were there around the time it was open, and we saw what was becoming of it, the building itself. So, and Spaceship Earth, I was obsessed with that ride. We would ride it 3 times in a row. And because the cast members, my mom had my baby sister, she was a baby, they just let us sit in the car and go through it again. They wouldn't tell us to get out, which was so nice of them. You're not allowed to do that now anymore. But that we just love that attraction. But ours was the Jeremy Irons version. That was our favorite. That was the only version we knew, because Walter Cronkite, I think they removed him in '93. So, but that was our version. That was the one we loved and adored, and that's where that kind of came from. But the song for Spaceship Earth, that was featured only with the Walter Cronkite version, not with the Jeremy Irons. So, but I would hear the ending part of the Tomorrow's Child that they had without Sally Stevens singing. So I had heard that in the park a lot. So I knew that, and I heard the song on the cassette tape. And so I just thought, well, wouldn't it be, because both ideas of the song are so similar and are so hopeful about our future as children, as adults. And I just thought that's the perfect combination right there. I'm surprised nobody's ever done it before, and nobody has. So that's why that kind of came out of there. And I think that's why it's the most popular song on the album.
So you also cover Two Brothers, a song from the American Adventure, but you're joined in a duet for this one. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I interviewed the original singer, Ali Olmo, who had never been interviewed before. And she had never, I don't think she ever actually saw the attraction in person, American Adventure. But she was recognized, her voice was recognized all over the world, from all over, all different people who knew her voice from the Two Brothers track. And my father and I just love that song, love that segment in the American Adventure. So we just, I was like, that has to be one of the songs. And it's actually not owned by Disney. So that's the only song on the album I have to work with a different company to have the rights for, receive the rights for that song. But I called Ali up and I said, would you be interested in giving this song a different spin and also incorporating the line that was cut from the original song? And she's like, sure, absolutely. So we worked together via FaceTime, because she was based in California and I'm based here in Philly. So we both had to record our material separately, but we rehearsed and went over line by line what we wanted. So she recorded the guitar portion for that song and her vocals, and I recorded my vocals over here. And it was just, when I finally heard the final mix, I was like almost in tears. I was like, this is, oh, wow. Such a beautiful song, and to be able to sing it with her, an honor.
A cannonball, don't pay no mind if you're gentle or if you're kind. He don't think of the folks behind, all on a beautiful morning, all on a beautiful morning, all on a beautiful morning.
So 3 of the 7 songs on the album, technically 4 if you count the melody, are Epcot related, including the previously ones we've talked about, and then Celebrate the Future Hand in Hand. What is it about Epcot musically that just sticks with you?
I think when I hear about it, I feel home. You know, I think that's our family's favorite park because it was such an inclusion of people, of different types of people, of imagination, of ideas, of a new hope, basically, for our future and what can come out of that. So for me, I think of all the parks, of course, but I really think of Epcot as the park that was something so special to me. And it just has the most beautiful music. Like, I could have just done a whole album on Epcot music and people would have been very happy. But I wanted to make sure I gave my love to the other parks too, because they all have their own unique songs that I just adore too. So that was fun.
So let's talk about another park. You cover the Great Outdoors from the Country Bear Vacation Hoedown, both in the show and then also on the Singalong VHS, if I remember correctly.
Yes. That's where I heard it originally. So I never heard it in the parks, but it was at Walt Disney World at some point when they had the Summer Hoedown, when they were switching out the shows, because they had 3 shows, the Christmas, main show, and summer show. And I'd already interviewed the writer of it, George Wilkins. So he was so great. I called him up. I said, "Can I have your blessing?" And he's like, "Absolutely, of course." And he actually wrote 2 new verses for the song. And Disney would not allow us to include that due to copyright, whatever, some hoity-toity business, something. I don't know. So, but it was so much fun to do that song. Like that one is just a hoedown in of itself. So that one's a fun one too.
Are the Bears your favorite animatronic musical review at the Magic Kingdom?
No. Carousel of Progress is that's where my heart is. We rode that thing so many times. I know it by heart. I have the whole show on my phone. So sometimes I listen to it because I'm just like, oh, it's been a long day, a 30-minute commute. I'll listen to Carousel of Progress. So, weird as it may seem. But again, like that attraction itself is just so funny. I can't get enough of it. So, my parents would tell me when it was on a seasonal basis, like the Timekeeper, I would just cry because I was like, no, I want to ride it. This is my ride. So that one is probably number 1. Number 2, probably Country Bears, because it's just so silly.
Yeah.
And I'm a silly person, so I don't mind that.
Are there songs that you wish you would have covered on the album or that you would hope to cover if you do another one?
I had 30 I wanted to do. I wanted to do them all. If I had the money, I would have totally have done it. But, college kid coming out of college, you get what you pay for. So I didn't have enough for that, but that's okay. I would have loved to have done the Energy song from Universe of Energy, not the Universe of Energy. That one's great, but I love the one where it's like, listen and you'll hear the heartbeat of a universe teeming with force. I just love that ballad. It's gorgeous, and I'm kind of kicking myself I didn't include it. But again, I was basing this album off of things that were from my childhood and that really meant something to me. And I don't really recall hearing that very often on the cassette. I don't think that was something that we replayed a lot. So I'm fine with the decisions I made on the album, but I do wish there are other things I really wanted to cover. I think the next album I'd want to do is Disney Villains. So maybe Disney Parks another time, but I like Disney Villains, and there are a couple songs that I feel don't get enough love, and I really would love to cover them. I feel it would be a lot of fun, because there are songs that are from like the sequels and TV shows, and they are so catchy, you know what I mean? So I want I think I might want to go the Disney villain route.
Well, Tammy Tuckey, thank you so very much for being on Dreamfinders. I appreciate it.
It was so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much.
And that's it for this episode of Dreamfinders. Thanks so much to Tammy Tuckey for being my guest. Make sure to check out online her new album, You'll Find Me on Main Street, available anywhere good music is found. Also, be sure to check out her podcast, The Tiara Talk Show, and learn all about what she's up to at tammytuckey.com. Our podcast artwork is provided by J.P. Tanner. Find his other work at tanwoodcreative.com. This podcast is distributed by WDW News Today, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news. Read all they have to offer at wdwnt.com. Dreamfinders is hosted and produced by yours truly, Nathan Hartman, who you can follow on Twitter at SomeStuffISaid. Tell your friends about the show, and please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. It takes 3 seconds, and it means the world to me. Also, if you or someone you know would make a great guest on this program, feel free to email us at dreamfinders@wdwnt.com. I'm Nathan Hartman, and remember, if we can dream it, then we can do it.